Hi, and welcome back to Thone's 1 Peter Nibbles number 2. Greeting to the elect pilgrims. It's part 2 of 9, Peter's office and authority. And this, of course, comes from 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. The apostle. Why is this in the Bible? It's to help us understanding why the authority of Peter should not be questioned. And the communications is the importance of this testimony, the testimony of Peter. Application to me. Well, this is, we understand that he was an apostle, and Martin Luther talked about what this office meant. He who preaches otherwise than a messenger of Christ is not to be heard. If he preach as such, then it is one as if thou didst hear Christ speaking in thy presence. So he's saying here that if we hear someone speaking and they seem to be speaking for themselves, then we can ignore that pretty much. However, if it sounds like that you're in the very presence of Jesus when he was preaching himself, then we should be very, very attentive to that. Now, after that sort of philosophical difference, I'm reading now from Matthew Henry, his complete commentary, and he continues this. Their dignity and preeminence lay in these things. They were immediately chosen by Christ himself. They were first witnesses, then preachers of the resurrection of Christ, and so of the entire gospel dispersion and dispensation. Their gifts were excellent and extraordinary. They had a power of working miracles, not at all times, but when Christ pleased. They were led into all truth, were endowed with the spirit of prophecy, and they had an extent of power and justification beyond all others. Every apostle was a universal bishop in all churches and over all ministries. And let's just, think about one little thing here that it was said. Their gifts were extraordinary, excellent and extraordinary. They had power of working miracles, but not at all times, but when Christ pleased. And this is a unique property that was given to the apostles, that they had the ability, when it would further the gospel, to work miracles. They had the ability to speak prophetic statements. And you see, this is different than, we have prophecy today, but that's really preaching, is prophecy today. But in those days, before there was a Bible to preach from, then they were that unquestionable source of truth of the present, the reason for the present, and also the future. And so we think about the great strength and power that he had, and it's wonderful. So now, where does God lead us? Listen to Peter's testimony. And my response is, Lord, thank you for providing this important testimony to come from an unquestioned leader of the early church. There was no questioning amongst the members of the early church that apostles had special powers and unique qualifications. So let us remember that when we read the writings of apostles. And by the way, most all of the New Testament was written by apostles. Certainly the book of Matthew was, the book of John was, those two Gospels. Most all of the epistles were written by apostles, epistles and apostles. There's a couple of exceptions and a couple of unknowns. We don't know for certain who wrote Hebrews to know whether that was an apostle or not. We don't know, there are a few things we don't know, but the great majority of the theological part of the New Testament was written by apostles, and that's why they were given this power and this understanding that they could represent Christ up until the time when the books that they were writing represented him, and they were, of course, were all passed away by this time. We'll talk to you next time.